I'd like to welcome everybody to today's Business Management Committee meeting, Thursday, April 25th, 2024. The first item on the agenda is approval of last month's Business Management Committee meeting minutes, March 28th, 2024. I'll entertain a motion for approval. All right, we've got a motion and a second. Any corrections? Then let's vote. All right, the motion passes. The minutes are approved. The next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the solicitation of proposals for the procurement of mass notification system, RFP P50515. Constance Dennis, Manager of Technology Applications. The lectern is yours.
Good morning, Chairman Durrett, Vice Chair Williamson, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Hurley, and other members of the Business Management Committee. My name is Constance Dennis. I am the Manager of Intelligent Transportation Systems in the Department of Technology. This is my first time presenting to the board. I am here to present a request for resolution authorizing the solicitation of proposals for a mass notification system, RFP 50515. Next slide, please. MARTA currently has had Everbridge as its mass notification system since 2020. Internal alerts were the first to be implemented, and the implementation of passenger alerts occurred in August of 2021. Technology plans to go before the board to renew for one additional year with Everbridge while we bid for a new system to take advantage of newer technology available. We're looking for an all-in-one system with the following functionality: customized messaging and alerts. These include service alerts, emergency alerts, weather alerts sent in SMS text messaging format, voice calls, and email. It should also include integrations with MARTA's social media pages, digital signage, its MARTA.com website, and the MARTA On The Go app. Also included are internal alerts, emergency blasts via text, and voice calls and surveys sent internally to MARTA employees. Upon completion, the benefits that MARTA will gain include all of the above-mentioned features and other additional features such as location-based services, sending alerts to devices in a geographic location, chat functionality, two-way communications, and scalability. Next slide, please. Upon approval of this resolution by the Board of Directors, technology staff will proceed with the RFP process to solicit and evaluate proposals from various vendors in the market to seek the best solution that will meet MARTA's needs. We will be seeking a 5-year contract with the proposed vendor that will include installation, configuration, maintenance, and support of the new system. There is no DBE goal assigned at this time. The DBE goal will be assigned in the RFP pre-planning process. In conclusion, the Department of Technology requests the Business Management Committee's approval of the resolution authorizing the solicitation of proposals for the procurement of mass notification system, RFP 50515. Next slide, please. Thus concludes my presentation. Mr. Chairman, I will return the floor back to you.
Thank you very much. You are a rookie no longer. All right, we've got a motion, and we have a second. Questions? Ms. Hardage?
So does this in any way help with the CNSA app that the public would use, or is that going to be a different way to do that?
This is a separate system from the CNSA app. The CNSA app is for incident notifications from the public. This will be mass notifications for emergency alerts and service alerts, updates through this mass notification system.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Parson?
Yes, you mentioned that this system is used internally also to communicate with employees. How does that work? I mean, is this something that you can get surveys from or opinions, or how does that work?
We have notifications for internal emergencies at specific groups inside of MARTA Technology. We'll send a notification to cell phones via text message or voice call. And then MARTA employees have ability of taking surveys or receive notifications such as the benefits upcoming and things like that to their phones.
Okay, seeing no additional questions, let's call the question. The resolution passes. You did well.
Thank you.
All right, the next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the modification and contractual authorization for maintenance and support for Oracle Database, ERP, and ID management licenses, P27978. Mr. Kirby, lectern is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Durrett, Vice Chair Williamson, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Hurley, BMC Committee, MARTA employees and guests. My name is Torrey Kirby, Director of Technology Applications, and I am here to present a request for resolution authorizing the modification of the existing contract for maintenance and support of Oracle databases, ERP, ID management licenses, P27978 with Oracle America Incorporated. Next slide. The purpose of this procurement is the continuation of our enterprise resource planning, or ERP system, and financial systems three-part strategy to cloud using Oracle. The strategy first began with our production cutover of core HR and cloud recruiting in March of 2023. The second phase will comprise of the transitioning the remaining legacy modules to our cloud, specifically finance, also known with contracts management, purchasing, also with self-invoicing, budgeting, also known with encumbrance accounting, portfolio management, commonly used with our capital programs and invoicing, and guided learning. And this would be used to walk through or teach how to do a task such as initiation of a contract purchase with MARTA. Concluding with the ongoing review and application of new or emergency capabilities in the cloud space on a quarterly basis, and the sunsetting of historical lookup of the current Oracle Enterprise Business Suite, also known as eBiz, originally installed in 2006. Our request of this modification is twofold. The first is to extend the current Oracle modules to core HR and Oracle recruiting for a term of 2 years. The second request is to purchase the remaining legacy cloud modules, being finance, purchasing, budgeting, portfolio management, and guided learning for a term of 1 year. This will allow us to prepare and load the production environment with data in anticipation of our 2025 transition to cloud. As a result, we expect to reduce cost over time, given the reduction in hosting services, security and maintenance, production support, and software as a service, rather than licensing. We expect to present the next board request for Oracle licensing and support as early as June or July of this year. Next slide. After a long and extensive search and comparison of commercially available ERP and financial software as a service applications, MARTA identified Oracle as a viable replacement for the current outdated and non-future-proof locally installed application. As a result, we will be implementing an industry best practice solution which streamlines workflow and improves productivity by maximizing systems integration and reducing manual intervention. In addition, we will be injecting cutting-edge technology into stale and decades-old processes and procedures, which will improve the user experience for both internal and external customers. Next slide. The financial considerations for this modifications are, after a close review of the financial cost to procure such a function forward system by MARTA's internal audit group, it was determined that MARTA's governmental pricing was majorly fair and reasonable, with a small portion being unsubstantiated due to no comparable products having been sold to local government agencies. However, given each item on the invoice quoted at only 11% of the list price, it represents a significant discount to MARTA. As a result, the Department of Technology recognizes the savings for the features provided and believes it is of the best interest of the authority to proceed with the purchase of the modules in question being order management and supply chain modules. These are best used or seen with enhanced reporting and data analytics as part of this contract modification. The current contract value is $21,106,961.05, giving us a total, including unsubstantiated funds, of $1,831,313.17, for a total new contract value of $22,938,274.22. No DBE goal was assigned for this single source procurement. Next slide. In conclusion, I seek your approval authorizing the modification of the existing contract for maintenance and support of Oracle databases, ERP, and ID management licenses, P27978 with Oracle America Incorporated, to increase by $1,831,313.17 to a maximum contract value of $22,938,274.22. Next slide. Thank you for your time, and may I answer any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Kirby. I'll entertain a motion and a second. Put it on the table. Okay, we've got that. You are quite the salesman. That was really well put together with the benefits, and you really got my attention with 11% of the list price for a lot of these modules. I like it a lot. Are there any questions or comments? I told you you were a good salesman. Let's go ahead and vote.
Thank you, sir.
Resolution passes.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Kirby.
Thank you all.
All right, the next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing award of a contract for DocuSign Electronic Signature Enterprise, IFB, B50401. Mr. Victor Hall, you have the lectern.
Good morning, Chairman Durrett, Vice Chair Williamson, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Hurley. My name is Victor Hall. I'm an interim AGM of Technology, and I'm here today to present a request for authorization to award a contract for the procurement of application DocuSign, Electronic Signature Enterprise, IFB, B50401. Next slide. DocuSign is a digital signature platform that encrypts documents and includes details of the signatory. This sets it apart from most e-signature services such as Adobe. Most e-signature platforms have limitations on the integration within our system, but DocuSign offers an ease of integration and the best support model. On an average, we process roughly 13,000 e-signatures a year. That's a little over 1,000 per month. The DocuSign contract will expire on July 25th, 2024. Next slide. Procurement considerations. Advance notice to bidders was sent to 27 vendors. 2 bids were submitted. 1 bid was deemed non-responsive. However, the lowest bid was deemed non-responsible as the price exceeded the reasonable threshold of the independent cost estimate. In February 2024, MARTA decided to negotiate directly with DocuSign, and DocuSign presented a pricing of $560,309. There were no DB goals assigned to this request. Next slide. The financial considerations, this will be a 3-year base term and 1-year option. The base term total amount will be $415,044. The option year will be $145,265 with a total value of contract of $560,309. Next slide. The Department of Technology requests the Business Management Committee recommend approval of the resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of application DocuSign, Electronic Signature Enterprise, IFB, B50401, to DocuSign Incorporated, for a maximum contract value of $560,309. Next slide. Thank you. I now return the floor to you, Mr. Durrett.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Entertain a motion and a second for the approval of this resolution. Properly moved and seconded. Does anybody have any questions? Rod Frierson.
Yeah, so, with this license agreement, is this, unlimited use of all DocuSign signatures? We can use as many as we want?
Yeah, it's usage-based. The price was quoted on 20,000 usage per year. Again, as I mentioned earlier, we average about 13,000, so we built in some room for growth.
Okay, so if we exceed 20,000, then there'll be another charge for
There may
use of
be
service.
a somewhat of an escalated usage charge, but based on historical numbers, we don't anticipate going there. The difference between the last contract and this contract, based on the 20,000 usage set, was about $3,000.
Okay. And then also in the bidding process, you mentioned that there was 2 bids submitted. One bid wasn't quite what you were expecting.
So the first bid was deemed non-responsive, as legal told me they didn't follow directions.
Okay.
The second bid was deemed non-responsible because, as you can see, with what cost we got with DocuSign directly, their bid was like $1 million. I have the numbers right here in front of me. $1,427,000, and that was with a reseller as opposed to directly with the OEM.
Okay, for the same period of time?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, seeing no other requests for comment or questions, let's vote. Resolution passes. Mr. Hall, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
You also are apparently a very good salesman. The next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing award of a contract for the procurement of Microsoft Unified Support Services, price proposal P50507. Nancy Joseph, you have the lectern.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Durrett, Vice Chair Williamson, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Hurley, and other members of the Business Management Committee. My name is Nancy Joseph. I am the Director of Technology, Infrastructure, and Production in the Department of Technology. I am here to present a request for resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of Microsoft Unified Services P50507. Next slide, please. Microsoft Unified Services is a suite IT support services. It provides proactive support and optimizes technology usage through the entire IT lifecycle. This would include training, troubleshooting, maintenance, and security services. The maintenance services ensure that systems are updated regularly, operate smoothly with minimal disruption to business operation, and handle a wide range of issues such as hardware, software, connectivity problem, and network issues. The security services protect IT infrastructure from cyber threats and attacks by providing proactive monitoring and management of systems, ensuring that any vulnerabilities or threats are detected and resolved quickly. Next slide, please. Financial DBE consideration. The Microsoft Unified Services offering is a single source exclusively from Microsoft in the amount of $849,466. This 3-year contract is funded with local operating funds. The DBE goal is set at 0 as this is a sole source procurement. Next slide, please. The Department of Technology requests the Business Management Committee recommend approval of the resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of Microsoft Unified Services P50507 to Microsoft in the amount of $849,466. Next slide, please. Thank you. I now return the floor to you, Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Joseph. Entertain a motion and a second for this resolution. Properly moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments? Mr. Floyd?
Does anybody find it odd that they sell us this stuff and then they have to sell us another package to watch over what they sold us the first time? Am I the only one that considers that odd?
Apparently so.
Thank you for sharing.
All right, seeing no other questions or comments, call the vote. Resolution passes. Thank you, Ms. Joseph.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to hear from Emil Zonoff now regarding a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for professional consulting services for MARTA's Oversight Committee, which is MARTOC, the management audit, and this is for a letter of agreement, LOA L50516. Mr. Zonoff.
Good morning, Chairman Duret, Vice Chair Williamson, Mr. Greenwood, members of the MARTA Business Management Committee, MARTA executives and guests. Thank you for the opportunity to present the resolution authorizing the award of the contract for professional services to execute the statutory management audit for MARTOC. Next slide. I'd like to begin by giving you a little bit of context. The MARTOC audit is actually an audit that's described in the MARTA Act, Section 17, subsection E, which requires MARTA to undergo an independent management audit under the supervision and approved by the Metropolitan Atlanta Rapid Transit Overview Committee, or as we call it, MARTOC, every 4 years. The last audit was conducted in 2020. Since we're in 2024, we're due for another management audit. As I mentioned earlier, the management audit must be independent of MARTA and must be completed no later than December 31st, 2024. This deadline is also written into the law. In addition to that, the final report will be distributed to all of you, the MARTA board members. It will be sent to the state governor, to the state auditor, and also to MARTOC, obviously. MARTA sent a letter outlining the proposed scope and engagement process for the 2024 audit to the chair of the MARTOC committee earlier this year. She reviewed the proposal and agreed to the approach. Later on, probably a couple of weeks ago, we sent her a communication outlining our proposal, which I will present to you today. She reviewed that as well and approved it. The 2020 MARTOC management audit was performed satisfactorily, really very well by the one of the big four consulting firm, KPMG. Let's go to the next slide. We received 2 proposals for this work. One was from KPMG in the amount of $219,990, and the other one was from Crow LLP in the amount of $198,550. Crow is our external financial auditor, just as a reminder. As we look at the proposals and evaluated the totality of the circumstances, we would recommend KPMG because of the firm's prior history of successfully executing the 2020 MARTOC management audit, as well as proposed faster execution timeline, as well as a Georgia-based DBE participation, which, even though was not required under the law or under what we requested, they proactively proposed. The proposed rate that you see on the slide, or that's baked into the total amount, represent a very modest 2.5% increase compared to the hourly rate in the 2020 MARTOC audit. This is very favorable to the authority because the inflation rate over the last 4 years is much higher than 2.5%. So when we considered the rate increase of 2.5%, I felt very comfortable being in this profession for over 20 years that this is very fair and favorable to the authority. The proposal was $219,940.40. However, I'm seeking an approval of $231,214.40 because I baked in 50 additional hours as a buffer or contingency to be used only if needed as part of this audit. Given that we're facing a statutory deadline, in the case of something unexpected happening where they need a little bit more work, I'm asking for additional 50 hours as a buffer so we can react very quickly on the flight and not miss that statutory deadline. Therefore, I'm requesting an approval of $231,214.40 for this resolution. With that, Mr. Chair, I yield the floor back to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zanoff. I'll entertain a motion and a second. Properly moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? Mr. Frierson.
One of the situations, I think, I remember the last time we had the audit done, that when it was submitted, there was a lot of things that needed to be addressed as a result that we need to come back and address. And I'm assuming that the same process will happen when it comes to this. Is that correct?
That is correct. The law requires the firm to provide a set of recommendations to MARTA, so I fully imagine that they will come, and after thorough assessment, will provide a set of recommendations.
Okay, and so when those recommendations come, do they come through the audit committee for us to look at before they're sent out again to be finalized or reviewed a second time?
The answer is and the draft report was presented to the audit committee during the November audit committee meeting, and our plan, and the reason I'm here today versus later on in the year, is to have everything baked in a final draft form for the audit committee meeting in November of this year, so the board can review the recommendations and the output of the audit collectively, holistically, before any documentation is sent in a final form to the constituents I mentioned earlier.
Well, great, and I want to make sure that that was clear, because I think in the audit committee, we can see the number of audits that this enterprise has to go through to ensure that we're auditing our records properly and we're working with integrity. And any of the questions that we have concerning our performance should be clear in those audit findings that we talk about in the audit committee. I just want to say I think that's a great way that we need to present it. So thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Pine.
As a follow-up to Mr. Frierson's comments, and one of my questions was what he's already covered, but I recall there were a lot of recommendations made on the prior audit, and some of those were operational in nature that were not maybe even appropriate or necessary, but have we followed through and checked off the list of what we have done for that list of recommendations, and have we decided not to do?
There is a long list of things that were recommended in the prior audit. As you pointed out, some of those things were not necessarily applicable, or MARTA chose a different technology to accomplish the same goal, for example, which I think is a perfectly acceptable approach to address a particular recommendation or a risk. So instead of using this kind of data warehouse, we're using another legitimate data warehouse for a variety of technical reasons. And there's other recommendations that are in various stages of being implemented. I think there was probably close to 30 different recommendations, so it's difficult for me to generalize, but I think that there is a spectrum of what's being done right now.
So as a follow-up, do we have the opportunity, either before they start the audit or after they come back with their list of recommendations, to say we agree with this, we disagree with that, and this is the reason? Just the process.
So from a process perspective, we will have an opportunity to provide a management response under every recommendation. That was sort of the process that we followed the last time around. I don't see a reason to break precedent. I think it was a good process, and MARTA should and will have an opportunity to provide a formal response to under every recommendation. And the audit committee and the board will have a chance to see what MARTA said under every recommendation.
Mr. Floyd.
This is a management audit. What's the difference in that and what we're paying Crow to do now?
So I'll start a little bit backwards and answer what Crow is doing for us right now. the responsibility of Crow as our external financial auditor is to verify and provide assurance to the board and the investors, and we do have investors in the form of bond investors, that MARTA's financial statements are free from any material misstatements. So they look at our financial statements, okay? They look at the numbers, they look at how we accumulate and ultimately report our financial book and records according to the government accounting standards, and whether we comply with those standards, and whether our financial statements are free from material errors and misstatements. The management audit, on the other hand, would look at how the authority is being managed. So the law says we need to undergo management audit, quote, on the condition of the management of the authority. So they would look at policies and procedures. They would look at operational statistics, I would imagine, right? That's what they do the last time around. They would look at, you know, whether we follow our own procedures, whether the management team is managing the authority appropriately. They're not going to look at the financial statements of the authority to express an opinion on the financial statements themselves. So they look at, KPMG would look at the management side of things, whereas Crow strictly looks at the financial statements that we issue under the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, ACFR.
I did know the difference in the two then. The other question is the fact that Crow does our financial audit and we pay them to do that, have anything to do with the fact that you didn't select them to do this? Or was the reason simply because?
No, this was not the reason. The reason was that we felt it's in the best interest of the authority, and also in consultation with MARTA, that we proceed with KPMG.
So is there some reasoning then behind having two different firms do it? Is there anything to that, or is that?
I think there's always good to have an element of competition and have a choice, because we don't know what proposals we would get, you know. And I'll give you an example. Another Big Four firm, the last time in 2020, was thinking about proposing something in the range of $1 million. And if we had received something that says, well, we'll do it, but for $2 million, you know, they're not, these numbers are in the same ballpark, but we didn't know that until we get those proposals. So I think there's always an element of competition that's healthy for a procurement process.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no other requests for comment or questions, I'll call the question. Resolution passes.
Thank you.
Donna, thank you. A resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of MARTA's Mystery Customer Program, RFP P50370. Ms. Paula Nash, welcome to the lectern.
Good morning, Chairman Durrett, Vice Chair Williamson, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Hurley, and members of the MARTA Board. I'm Paula Nash. I'm the Executive Director of the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, and today I'm before you requesting a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of MARTA's Mystery Customer Program, RFP P50370. Next slide, please. The Mystery Customer Program is a tool in which we hire a company to have their staff ride the MARTA system to monitor MARTA's compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act, or the ADA. Through this program, we assess the performance of our frontline employees as well as our equipment. Next slide, please. So the scope of this contract will, as I mentioned, evaluate the performance and behavior of frontline employees in meeting customer expectations and complying with the mandates of the ADA, and delivering courteous, reliable service for, of course, all of our patrons, but most importantly, our seniors and individuals with disabilities. The scope will also evaluate equipment, and this will be things like our mobility aid securement systems, our announcements, our PA system, mobility ramps, and other equipment. The focus, of course, is on ADA compliance, but this contract does not take the place of like safety and our supervisory monitoring that is already occurring in operations. But at the same time, if the mystery customers do see, say, things such as a discourteous operator or safety violations, they will immediately report that to us. The scope will also assist management in pinpointing problems and opportunities and need for training that may be noticed. There will be 200 rides or shops conducted per quarter, and this will be a combination of both bus, rail, and mobility. Some of these rides will start at our customer service, getting information about the rides, and it will go all the way through the rides and actually also have contact with some of our station agents just to make sure that we're covering all areas. And the contractor will provide a monthly report of key performance indicators to us. Next slide, please. So some of the benefits of having a mystery customer program that we have gotten in the past is, and we expect to continue, is that it will help to identify opportunities to retrain employees. Sometimes we find that necessary for things such as how to, the securement of individuals in wheelchairs or mobility aid devices. One example I have of how we used this, this program in the past is there was a time frame, and this was a few years ago, when we had a PA, our PA system wasn't functioning properly on all of our buses, particularly some of our older buses. And this was brought to our attention. What happens when the PA system doesn't function properly is that we require, or I should say the automated announcement system is what I'm referring to, doesn't function properly. We require our operators to then make the announcements so that the customers know when, particularly our ADA customers know when certain stops are coming. And we realized through this program that that just wasn't happening very frequently. The operators weren't making the announcements. So we worked with our technical training group to actually have them emphasize the ADA training, particularly announcements, for our operators in their recertification program. So we do use this to definitely help the system and to help comply with the ADA. It also has identified buses or rail cars that were having malfunctioning automated systems, which I just mentioned. Another kind of example of more recently is announcements that are actually made, but they may be made too late. So the system is pinging or misfiring the announcements so that by the time someone who, say, is visually impaired hears the announcement, the bus is already passing the stop. So we have noticed that and have taken actions to get that corrected as well. So those are just some examples of things of how this has been used in the past. We also provide the information to our customer information center so that they can use data for their KPIs. And of course, it demonstrates MARTA's commitment to ADA compliance. We actually go over these reports with our MAC committee, our MARTA Accessibility Committee. Next slide, please. So 2 proposals were received, and both were deemed responsive and responsible. The contract term will be a 1-year contract with 4 one-year options. The total cost is $644,800.18, and the DBE goal assigned to this contract is 25%. Next slide, please. So the SEC committee recommended Alisig Consulting LLC as the vendor for the mystery customer program. The SEC was very impressed with their technology, and particularly their software platform, and the fact that we will receive access to near real-time monitoring data and reports. Next slide, please. I also want to mention that although this contract has a 25% DBE goal assigned to it, Alisig is a DBE firm, so this will be, should have 100% DBE participation for this contract. And with that, I respectfully request the Business Management Committee to recommend approval of a resolution authorizing the award of a contract with Alisig Consulting LLC for the procurement of MARTA's Mystery Customer Program, RFP P50370, in the amount of $644,800.18. Next slide, please. Thank you, and that concludes my report. I turn it back over to you, Mr. Dredd.
Thank you, Ms. Nash. We've already received a motion and a second, so entertain questions and comments. Mr. Pond?
Great program, and I think it's important that if you want to improve things, you've got to measure, first of all. I got two quick questions. You mentioned equipment malfunctions, PA, and all of that. What about employee behavior? I assume that's part of that. Can you share a little more there?
Yes. So employee behavior is one of the things that they also monitor. So they let us know if there's discourteous employees. Also, and sometimes this type of behavior may lead to additional training, but say employees that don't let a service animal onto a bus, and it may be that because they're just not aware that that needs to happen. Employees that aren't securing the system, securing devices properly, so they do make us aware of those kind of things. Some of it leads to more training. Some of it actually leads to discipline, depending on what's brought to our attention. We actually provide all that information to operations when we get it, and then they decide if their discipline is needed.
And when those reports come in, someone puts that all together, but who in the end is responsible for the execution of those improvements?
So depending on the improvement that we're looking at, so the reports come into my office, we send them out to operations or whichever unit would be responsible for it. So if it's a discourteous operator, it would be operations that would look into, they would follow up and make sure that what happened is correct. Or if a passed by a disabled patron and didn't pick them up, they would look into that matter, and they would be ultimately responsible for handling it. If it's something that may deal with ADA training, then my office would get with our training group and kind of be responsible to make sure that that kind of thing happens.
Mr. Frierson?
Yeah, just kind of a little bit about what Mr. Pond was talking about. So it comes to you as a source.
Yes.
And I'm assuming that all of this is evaluated with sheets and records that show, okay, we got these issues. And then you mentioned that the KBI performance is also generated from the data. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right.
Yes.
And so from the KBI data that you receive, you make a decision, okay, this is the department that it goes to, and it's kind of shared with that department. Right?
That is correct.
So what's the process of making sure that the issue has a corrective action plan to deal with it, and that is resolved on the back end? And do we have a way to document that?
So we do document that, and so we do it through, depending on where it's going, we follow up with that department to actually provide us with data showing what the results were when they did their own little investigation into it and what steps were taken. And we keep this information because my office actually does have to report certain information to the FTA involving the ADA. So we do maintain that data.
And does that data also go back to the vendor that's providing the evaluation information that they?
Actually, we have not been sending it back to the vendor.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. It's important also. I just want to make sure I understand how that works, because the problems that we have experienced in the past, we shouldn't have those if we've done the corrective actions. Is that fair to say?
That is fair to say, yes.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure I understood. Thank you.
Mr. Tsegebe.
Thank you for the presentation. I love this program. I think it's really important for customer experience. My only question is just around the cost of it. How does the cost look this year and compared to the other one? I'm just like doing the quick math. It's like $125 a ride that they're essentially charging us. So like, is that market? Is that higher?
So our previous contract, which we entered into 5 years ago, it was a 5-year contract. The total cost then was $508,000 for 5 years. So it's more expensive this time around, 5 years later, and it is with a different company than we had previously. So they're a little more expensive.
Thank you.
Mr. Floyd.
This is the second time today I've seen us not take a low and responsive bidder. And my concern there is a couple of things. One is if a low bidder is not awarded the contract, that affects his attitude toward MARTA. Okay, and it probably, in my experience, it being a low bidder, is he's not coming back. Okay, and so that's troublesome in itself. I mean, I'm getting to a question here, so hang on with me, all right? But the other thing is that other people bidding MARTA work see that the low bidder was not given the work, and they then tend to think, well, maybe MARTA's got something about this project that they're leaning toward one way or the other. So it can be problematic from a country that lives on the low bid system. Okay, that's what we live off of in this country. But my question to you, I guess, is what do you tell the low bidder in this case as to why he did not get this job?
Sure. So the low bidder in this case was the company that we have had for the last 5 years. So what we saw different in the new company that we did select was much more advancement in technology, which we just did not have. Things were more manual with our previous vendor. And so it was the advancement in technology, the being able to get these reports in almost real time. So while the mystery customers are actually sitting on the bus or the train, they're actually entering this data into their laptops or whatever technology they're using, hardware they're using, and it's going into a system that we actually have access to, which we did not have access to that portal with our previous vendor. So there was a lot of technology upgrades that led to us choosing this company. Yes.
Frida?
Just a statement for those of us from on the board. We see this very important, and thank you for knowing that you continue to do this. But we're the ears and eyes when we're on the trains. Believe me, they know when I'm on the train or the bus. Because I take lots of notes and I send them out to whoever I think is appropriate. But that being said, should it just come to you? Would that help consolidate maybe some of the same issues that maybe the secret shoppers are seeing? Because you know, it's our job too. And I think most of us will tell you that they know when we're on the train and the buses, so.
Right. Definitely. You can definitely send it to
Okay.
me, and we will work with it the same way we do with the
Okay,
mystery
we may
customer.
be seeing some of the same issues they're seeing. That's why I said that. Thank you.
Yes.
Or Frida, you can do like I do and just get in touch with George, and he takes care of it, so.
Or that.
Yeah, I just want to, did want to chime in on that. It's like, of course, you're welcome to funnel it through Paula's program, but I wouldn't preclude the board members from continuing to do what you do in terms of seeing and saying directly. No, I think
Yes.
it's fair that we get the unvarnished version from time to time.
No, I think it's our job.
Yep. Mr. Andrews?
Yeah, just I want to clarify a few things that have been discussed here today on the process. One, this was not a bid, so the price, while it's a factor, it's not the determining factor. This was an RFP, so a lot of other issues go into it, and the bid is usually weighted at 10% or lower. And so being the low bid doesn't allow you to buy the contract on these type of situations. There are many other factors that go into it and that we have to take into account through the scoring process. So if it was a straight bid, we try and typically take the lowest bid unless there's a reason not to, whether it's they fail to have a DBE component, whether they fail to agree to the terms of the contract, or they failed to audit. But, you know, when it's an RFP, the price typically is not a driving factor. We want to contract, as Ms. Nash said, with the one that's in the best interest of the authority. So price is not always the best interest of the authority. You might want to pay a little bit more for new technology or better coverage or better resumes, candidly. The other thing I just want to also clarify, when we do RFPs, we don't typically go into the detail of why somebody wasn't selected. There's sometimes an exit interview, but not always. So we don't always just lay out, this is what you did wrong, or this is what the other group did better. So I just wanted to clarify all of that for everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Pond?
Mr. Andrews probably covered my question. I just think it's important that, and I encourage procurement to always look at best value, because if we want to have the best system, we need to basically have the best contractors working for us, and sometimes that's not the low-cost guys. So.
Thank you, Al. Ms. Ide?
Yeah, I just have one follow-up, and I'm going to try to ask this in the right way, Peter. When I'm looking at the scoring at the end of it, it looks like they were pretty similar, but the company we awarded it to was actually a slightly lower score. Am I looking at that wrong?
No, they ended up actually being the higher score, so I'm not sure what's in the package, but they were the lower score until the interviews, and then that changed everything.
Okay. That's what, I was looking at just the matrix, and it had
Okay.
them a couple points lower, and so somewhere in the packet it shows then what happened to the scoring after the interviewing. Okay,
Yes.
thanks. That was my clarification I needed.
Okay. I'll call the question. Let's vote. I'm not getting the message that it passed, but when I look at the scores, this is going to pass.
Thank you.
Kenya, can I go ahead and declare it? Who's not voted? Oh, it's Jennifer's fault. Okay. Okay. And she has voted now. The resolution passes. Thank you, Ms. Nash. Okay. Melissa Molinax is going to come up and present a resolution authorizing the approval of MARTA's updated advertising policy, which we discussed in a previous setting you guys got some feedback, and you're going to reflect that back
Yes.
to us.
We don't have a presentation or a deck. You guys have the resolution and the new policy in your packets. And the policy has been changed to remove the clause, pardon? Can you hear me now? Is this a Verizon commercial? Okay. So I said that we don't have a presentation, but you have the revised policy in your packet and the resolution. And the revised policy simply takes out the clause from the last time the committee considered it that would prohibit advertisement from our last mile partners, Uber, Lyft, ride shares, bikes, all of that stuff. So it's the same policy without that. Be happy to take any questions.
Okay, so the only change, just to be clear, is the transportation vendors.
Yes,
Okay. They're allowed to.
they're allowed. Mhm.
All right. I will point out that yesterday I was with somebody and we were watching a train go by, and he pointed out that the entire train was wrapped with an advertisement, and he said, "That's curious that you allow that on your trains." So I'll leave it at that. It's been moved and seconded, so any other questions? All right, I'll entertain the vote. Has everybody voted?
I don't see the vote information on mine.
And how do you vote?
All right, there we go.
Okay, the resolution passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Molinax. Okay, let's talk about our third quarter consolidated financial highlights and financial key performance indicators. Mr. Patterson, welcome to the lectern.
Thank you, Chair Durrett. Good morning, Chair Durrett, Vice Chair Williamson, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Hurley, and members of the Business Management Committee. I'm Greg Patterson, Senior Director of Budgets and Grants, and it is my pleasure to present MARTA's financial highlights for the third quarter ended March 31st, 2024. Next slide, please. All right, we'll go on next slide, please. At a summary level, MARTA budgeted a year-to-date surplus of $4.6 million through the end of March, but we recorded a surplus of $6.8 million. Net revenues were favorable by $2.7 million. Net expenses were $500,000 unfavorable to budget. Next slide, please. On the revenue side, taking a look at a little more detail, sales tax is favorable by $9.1 million year to date. That is due to the continued positive economic conditions we see in the greater Atlanta area and the inflation rate still maintaining. So the combination of those two things keep us in a positive performance on sales tax. Farebox revenue right now is sitting at $6.2 million unfavorable to budget. Now, this includes a positive adjustment for unrecognized revenue we had earlier in the year, around February, or in January, for the Breeze Mobile 2.0 app, and a downward adjustment for revenue not received from the Breeze Mobile accounting exploit. So those two things now are reflected in the year-to-date totals you see there. The remaining unfavorable balance you see is partially from, it's reflecting a revised lower ridership forecast, but that wasn't included in the revision to the ridership revenue forecast that we had. That's a piece of it. And then the other piece of it is an increase that we're seeing in some of the fare evasion. So those two things address that. We were able to tell that from looking at the number of taps versus the automated person counters that were happening on the buses. So that's on the passenger revenue side. With respect to year-to-date expenses, salaries and wages are favorable by $18.2 million due to higher than forecasted vacant positions. That's also the primary driver of the favorable benefits you see there of $14.9 million. Overtime is unfavorable to budget by $1.4 million. That is due to a combination of absenteeism and vacancies that we have. Contractual services are $1 million favorable to budget. This is driven mostly by underutilized external support contract services, some professional services, and temporary services. Those were offset by an increase in contracted paratransit and operating equipment services, but the net was positive. Total materials and supplies are unfavorable to budget by $1.2 million. That was driven by a greater than forecasted number of rebuilds, repairables, and auxiliary replacement parts for the fleet. And then finally, capital cost allocation was lower than forecasted by $27.3 million. This is driven by lower than forecasted direct charges to capital projects. That's a combination of vacant positions that have a high capital allocation rate, and sometimes it's insufficient timesheet coding or slower than forecasted progress on some specific projects. I'll also just mention on the other revenue slide, since it's close to $1 million there, that is largely driven from a positive investment revenue on our unified reserve. Next slide, please. Okay, this is going into the specific performance for the month of March. We were unfavorable on revenues by $0.8 million and $11.3 million favorable on expenses. The net impact of this was a $10.5 million surplus for the month of March. Next slide, please. All right, breaking this down on the revenue side, the only really noteworthy item here is that our passenger revenue was unfavorable forecast. This goes back to what I was saying towards the end of the year-to-date slides, the combination of the timing between when we had updated our ridership forecast versus our revenue forecast and the higher levels of fare evasion that we were seeing. On the expenses side, this is interesting. So the salaries and wages are favorable to budget by $10.9 million, and that's largely due to a budgeting error. So we had budgeted 3 pay periods in March, but with the extra day in February being a leap year, it actually fell on that last day of February as opposed to in March. So we had originally anticipated it being March 1. We were incorrect. So we budgeted an extra pay period than what we actually had. So that's why you're seeing a large favorable balance in both salaries and wages and in benefits there. It's driven by that. Contractual services are $2 million favorable to budget due to the lower than forecasted professional services and external support contracts. Other non-labor expenses are unfavorable to budget by $1.7 million due to an increase in third-party liability reserves. And then lastly, excuse me, capital charges are $5.3 million unfavorable for the same reasons listed in the year-to-date review, which is not enough direct charges to capital projects. Next slide, please. All right, so our key performance indicators for ridership. Next slide, please. Passenger revenues, you'll see the patterns I had mentioned earlier, so you can see the large correction in January and then a second correction in February. That was the up and the down. So March is now reflecting a more normal pattern for the fiscal year. Overall, we're seeing a lower than forecasted passenger revenue for the reasons I stated before. Next slide, please. On bus ridership figures, though, we can see that we recently started to meet the forecast pretty consistently, which is good news. March results have also met last year's results and forecast. Next slide, please. On rail ridership, we've seen a sudden and new trend here where we're falling short by around 100,000 unlinked trips each month since January, and it's also meeting the prior year ridership levels as well. Next slide, please. Okay, I will now hand the presentation over to my highly esteemed colleague, Ms. Latika Washington, to provide the capital highlights.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Durrett, Vice Chair Williamson, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Hurley, and the esteemed members of the Business Management Committee. Please excuse my voice. I'm going to try and talk a little slow so you can hear me, so I apologize ahead of time. Next slide, please. Under capital sources and uses for the State of Good Repair Funds tax, revenues were at $201.8 million compared to the budget at $195 million. We used $26.6 million in federal funds to date for a total amount of $299 million. On the uses side, we have spent $192 million broken down into each of the 5 asset categories shown. As you may recall, we were at $119 million through the second quarter, so spending has continued to ramp up since the end of the first quarter, and we anticipate to continue through the conclusion of the fiscal year. Next slide, please. Here are the top projects for the state of good repair, sorted by the top spends for this fiscal year. Station rehabilitation projects account for $26.9 in expenditures for the year to date. Work on stations like Airport, 5 Points, and Indian Creek are well underway in construction, and we anticipate spends through the end of the fiscal year to be strong. The new rail car procurement is the next top project with actual spend of $15.3 million, which represents 50.5% of their approved fiscal 2024 budget. I would also like to highlight great progress on the Clayton Operations and Maintenance Facility design. The demolition contract has been prepared and is ready to go out for construction bid, while the design of the new facility has accomplished 90% design completion. As a reminder, what you see on the screen is the core penny contribution to the project. In total, we have spent nearly $12 million in this fiscal year. Next slide, please. Under capital sources and uses for MARTA Atlanta, the tax revenues continue to perform well, with $49.7 million year to date. On the usage slide, we have spent $18.9 million, and I will detail that on the next slide. Next slide, please. Here are the top MARTA Atlanta projects sorted by expenditures. The MARTA Rapid Summer Hill BRT project continues to show strong spends due to the progress on the construction, utilities, and continued property acquisitions. Summer Hill is working on Hank Aaron currently and phasing some of the work to minimize the impacts to customers and residents, I should say. 5 Point Station transformation, as you have heard a lot about in the recent meetings, has progressed through NEPA environmental activities and has made substantial progress in design. We anticipate the design to be completed this summer. We will start seeing expenditures for deconstruction and demolition in fiscal year 25. Deconstruction and demolition will begin early summer and will provide an operational safety plan to the city. The Cleveland Metropolitan Arterial Rapid Transit Project continues to reflect a lower than anticipated spend as we partner with the City of Atlanta to repackage the construction contract for bid. Real estate acquisitions are underway with 10 under control of the 45 needed for the project. So we will see additional spend by the end of next quarter. The collaboration with the city is ongoing with the design and preparing the package for construction. The balance of the projects has been either in planning or transitioning to final design, like the Streetcar East project. The design team, HDR, is completing the analysis and should be completed within the next 30 days. This will kick off the outreach efforts as the design begins. We will then see an increase in the spend. Next slide, please. Under capital sources and usage for MARTA Clayton, the tax revenues also continue to perform well with $33.5 million year to date. On the uses side, we have spent $3.9 million, and I will detail that on the next slide. Next slide, please. Here are the MARTA Clayton projects sorted by expenditures. As noted earlier, the Clayton O&M facility is nearing 90% design milestone. This line item represents only the Clayton portion of the funding, the balance of which is in our State of Good Repair program. The package for demolition is being prepared for advertisement. This will also increase the spend on the project as the contractor is selected. For MARTA Rapid South Lake BRT, we continue to progress the 30% design due this spring and preparation for application for the FTA Capital Investment Grant Program. We've made some recent expenditures for public engagement on the airport connection study. Next slide, please. This concludes my presentation, and I turn it back to you, Chairman Durrett.
Thank you very much, Mr. Frierson, and bless you.
Thank you.
Nope. Okay. So Greg, I suggest that you put a tickler on your calendar for when we start doing our 2028 budget to remind everybody that it's a leap year.
I look forward to it.
All right, very good. Thank you very much, both of you, for the presentation. Are there any other matters to come before this committee? Okay, then we will draw this committee meeting to a close and prepare for the next committee meeting. Thanks, everybody.
First item on the agenda this morning is the approval of the March 28th, 2024 Planning and Capital Programs Committee meeting minutes. If I could have a motion and a second to bring it to the table. It has been properly moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments? If not, please let us vote. Motion passes. Second item on the agenda for today is the resolution authorizing approval of the airport connection alignment as the amendment to the locally preferred alternative for the MARTA Rapid South Lake project. Mr. Marcus Arnold, Director of Federal Corridors and Hubs. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair Blakely, Vice Chair Powers, Mr. Greenwood, Ms. Rocha, and members of the committee and board. My name is Marcus Arnold. I'm the Director of Federal Corridors and Hubs for MARTA's Planning and Project Development Department. Today, I'm requesting a resolution authorizing approval of the airport connection alignment as the amendment to the locally preferred alternative for the MARTA Rapid South Lake project. Next slide. So today, just wanted to provide a summary of where we're at on the project, talk about the process of assessment of the airport connection, also to our recommendations for this proposal and next steps in order to hopefully continue to advance this initiative as part of this project. Next slide. So this just provides the current status of the project. We have entered into project development as part of FTA's Capital Investments Grant Program. We have also received pre-award funding, $8.1 million, to support project development activities such as planning as well as environmental studies. We have done some preliminary environmental studies on the original portion of the corridor, and we are continuing to advance 30% design on the original portion of the corridor as well, and preparing for solicitation for a final designer for the project. Next slide. So just an overview of the current LPA, which was adopted in December of 2021, and essentially this portion you see in yellow was the original alignment connection to College Park MARTA station, as well as connectivity throughout Clayton County all the way to South Lake Mall. We are proposing a more direct connection to the airport, alignment option in orange. And so with this, we have identified additional opportunities for dedicated lanes as well as other mixed traffic portions of the alignment. And really the intent and purpose is really to provide greater access to jobs as well as multimodal connectivity to Clayton County, not only to the airport but to the system in the region. Next slide. So this is just a summary of our assessment of the airport connection, and we began this back in the summer of 2023. And so what we did was look at several alignment options along the corridor, particularly as it connects into the airport. Also to have quite a bit of coordination with key stakeholders, the Clayton County, City of Atlanta Department of Aviation, as well as Department of Transportation, Georgia Department of Transportation as well. And so as part of the whole assessment, we were able to identify the recommended alignment connection. As you can see here in the image, would be a new dedicated alignment that would serve the current, adjacent to the current MARTA Airport station as well. We have also conducted some recent public outreach, and we'll be talking about that in a little bit, as well as have gone through the process to begin to request approval of this recommendation. Next slide. So this slide just provides some of the key benefits. As I mentioned before, connection to jobs is key as part of this connection. Also to providing access not only within Clayton County but to the system. This will provide a faster travel time to the MARTA rail, as well as addresses growing demand for transit within Clayton County and along the corridor, as well as supporting land use and economic development initiatives within Clayton County as well. Next slide. So this provides a couple of renderings that we've identified for the airport connection. To the left is a potential opportunity for dedicated lanes along Riverdale Road, as you can see to the left and to the right. Mentioned before, a new elevated structure that would serve directly to the airport. As you can see, the structure below would go underneath the existing SkyTrain alignment here and connect directly to the airport. Next slide. So now I wanted to just play a really brief video of the open house, just to give you all a little bit more context to the open house on March 28th. Marcus Arnold, Director of Federal Corridors and Hubs with MARTA, and I'm excited today. We have our open house for the Clayton South Lake Rapid Project. We are definitely excited to be here. Great to see a lot of folks coming out and really learning about this project and the benefits of bus rapid transit for Clayton County. Getting a lot of great input, great feedback on a potential for direct connection to the airport is what we're looking at as part of the project right now, and it's really going to open up opportunities for access to more jobs, greater multimodal connections as well. Definitely excited to get a lot of good feedback about the project, and we feel like it's going to provide even quicker service to get to the airport, to get to MARTA Rail and other parts of the region as well as getting even more and better connectivity and mobility options within Clayton County. So very excited to be here today, and we're glad everybody's out and really being able to provide some great feedback. The volume was a little low, but essentially this video was put together as well and posted on our Connect Clayton website. Provide additional information for folks who may not have attended the open house, and also provided a survey and comment opportunities as well for those on our Connect Clayton website. So we used a wide range of tactics in order to promote and not only the open house, but the proposed airport connection. So we utilize the website, social media, email blasts, press releases, and other initiatives to really reach out and get as much input and feedback as we could on this proposal. Next slide. So this is just a highlight of our pathway forward. We are requesting approval of the LPA, amended LPA, to the airport connection. We did receive a resolution supporting the connection from the Clayton County Board of Commissioners on April 16th. So that step has already occurred. We are looking to continue to complete 30% design, not only for the original one when we anticipate later this summer, but also to potentially for the airport connection piece as well. We will be updating our NEPA checklist as well as environmental studies in preparation. With a successful approval of LPA, we would then submit that to FTA as well. We will continue to coordinate with FTA on a class of action to determine the level of environmental assessment needs to occur for the project. And we will be submitting our application to FTA in the summer for federal funds through their CIG program through Small Starts. And based on this proposal, we anticipate a projected service start date of 2030. Next slide. So this concludes my presentation. Again, I am requesting approval of the amendment to include the airport connection alignment as the locally preferred alternative for the MARTA Rapid South Lake project. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus, for the update. Could I get a motion in a second, please? It has been properly moved and seconded. Are there any questions or discussion? Mr. Price.
Yeah, I just have a comment. I was able to attend the open house and just kind of listen to some of the conversations. It seems like they were all very excited about what's getting ready to happen in this space. and I had a chance to talk to, I guess, one of the commissioners or city council persons concerning the modification in the route. And she seemed to be comfortable with where it's going to happen. What I didn't see a lot of was the business community at the open house, because this is going to impact them also in terms of this thoroughfare, and I think that's something that we really need to try to include their voice in. And maybe this has already happened in some other events with the business community, but I think that's kind of what I experienced when I was there. I was just there just to listen. I go to these events so that I can hear what people have to say about the projects and about MARTA. And but anyway, my takeaway was that they were very interested in this moving forward. Okay?
All right. Thank you, Board Member Farson. Thank you.
Yeah, I was gonna protest Rod's picture being in the video, but other than that, does this change the projected start date? I know it's 2030, you say now. Does this change that date from what it is without it?
So previously, we did have a little bit earlier start date for the original alignment. As we took time to really understand and identify this as a great opportunity for the project, that makes the project, I think, even more of a benefit, I think, to citizens and businesses along the corridor within Clayton County. So as we went back and did our analysis, we realized that there will need to be a little bit of additional time in order to get the airport connection piece up to speed on design. We currently have done some conceptual design as part of that assessment back in the summer, but we do believe there are some efficiencies. We'll start to look at, with the original alignment a little bit further ahead, opportunities to advance some of that work in preparation for that 2030 start date.
Okay, I mean, this is outstanding, by the way. I mean,
Thank you.
I think we all knew it was going to be something we wanted to do, but I'm still disappointed by 2030. I mean, just 6 years to get this thing, you know, I mean, we still continue to just take a lot more longer than what we really want to get this stuff up and running, especially for the people in Clayton County. But anyway, thanks.
Thank you.
Ms. Jones?
For once, Mr. Floyd said something that I actually wanted to say. But Marcus, thank you very much for this. So excited for the people of Clayton and actually the whole county of Clayton and getting people connected to the rest of the system, especially with the dedicated lanes. Question, how does this timeline align with the redevelopment out South Lake Mall?
Well, I think what we want to do is we're continuing to work with a lot of the stakeholders along the corridor, including South Lake Mall, and we'll continue to work towards understanding their current timeline as far as their plans as well. And as we start to look at, as we get further into design and starting to understand, the schedule and construction, we'll definitely want to make sure we're coordinating with all the work that they're doing to upgrade at the mall.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. And I will kind of echo their sentiments. Like, if there are any opportunities for us to expedite the schedule on this, because Clayton County has been a long time waiting for this project, so that would be much appreciated.
Yes.
So, thank you, Marcus.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next up on the agenda, resolution authorizing a modification and contractual authorization for architectural and engineering design services for 5 Point Station Transformation, AE 47796. Oh, sorry. Can we vote? Look, sorry. Hold on, Kelly. No, okay.
Good morning, Chair Blakely, Vice Chair Powell.
Hold on.
Oh, okay.
Hold tight. Sorry. Sorry, I'm so excited about that one. We forgot to vote.
Can I get a vote, please?
Thank you. You vote yes? Motion has passed. Thank you again, Marcus. And before Ms. Davis begins, I would like to defer to Ms. Rocha for an update.
Sure. Thank you, Chair Blakely. I just wanted to introduce the next two resolutions just to make sure we understood kind of what we've been going through the last couple of meetings. So back in March at the PCP, I presented a briefing to let you all know where 5 Points stands in terms of trying to get that project underway. And I had told you at that time there were 3 things that we needed to get under construction. One was our FONSI, which was as a result of our environmental assessment. One was the PGA, which is the paper grant agreement that we needed to sign with FTA for that RAISE grant. And the final was to get Skanska under contract. So at the April 11th board meeting, you did approve the resolution to expand the contract authorization for deconstruction and demolition. So that was just a portion, and that was the portion we greatly appreciated you letting us move that forward. And we received an update last evening, just so you know, that they are on track to sign the PGA by May 15th, which is also good news for this project. At this time, Kelly's going to present to you 2 resolutions. One is for SOM for our designer, and the second is for Skanska, as these weren't as critical as the one that we presented to you the last time. So for SOM, Kelly Davis will present the changes that were made during the design process and the need to support to complete the planning work, or I'm sorry, to complete the design work on the project. And then for Skanska, we're requesting contracting authority for the balance of the project. This will enable us to complete the negotiations and contract work orders as quickly as possible as the design finishes and we're able to negotiate those component GMPs. So thank you very much.
Ms. Davis, take it away.
Thank you, Ms. Roca. Good morning, Chair Blakely, Vice Chair Powers, Mr. Greenwood, Ms. Roca, members of the committee and the board. My name is Kelly Davis. I am the Director of the Facilities Program Management Team on our capital delivery side, and I am here to ask for a resolution authorizing the increased contract value for Skidmore, Owings & Merrill, LLC for architecture and engineering services for the 5 Points Transformation Project, contract number AE 47796. Next slide, please. So just a small agenda. We're going to go over the original scope of work, the additional services, requested authorization, and then the design schedule. Next slide, please. So the 2 approved work orders that we have for the original scope of work, that was for SOM they were hired to formulate one scope and then based upon MARTA's vision and goal. And with that, they were going to provide A&E design services, which included coordination with our CMAR contractor, condition assessments, concept development, updating the design criteria and the standards. They also would progress concepts to preliminary and final designs, ensuring that all designs conform to FTA guidelines for safety and security certification. And then once approved, the design will be a permittable, signed, and sealed set for construction drawings. Next slide, please. So if you remember, if you can remember, you've seen this hourglass before. During all of the different design iterations, we had as many as 13 options at one point. We got it down to 3. I mean MARTA. At that point, the City of Atlanta asked us to look at 2 more designs. So the second work order that we have for SOM was to do design and engineering on 5 options. Those options included option 9A expanded, which we eventually chose as our preferred option. They looked at one over Broad Street, Alabama Street. We looked at having an underground bus terminal at 143 Alabama, which is the old AJC building. And we also looked at doing some structural infill over the CXX track, which is located right next to the station. The tasks that they did that were not limited to, but they did structural engineering, traffic engineering, civil engineering. They had architectural scope and landscape scope. Next slide, please. Last March, I came before you and we selected our preferred alternative, which was 9A. After that, the City of Atlanta came to us and they asked us to look at reduced price and reduced scope. So what we did was a value engineering effort to do exactly what they asked us to do. In response, we worked with our consultant team to look at 3 options. 2 of the options were varying levels of deconstruction to the existing canopy. But as you know, it is 40 years old. So we had no idea what we would find once we actually looked into that concrete. So we landed on what we're calling option 9A refine, which was some cost-saving measures to the preferred alternative. One of the major things that we looked at was the reduction in the size of the canopy, and also instead of having a full glazed canopy, we went with one of mix of materials. So the center of the canopy now is glazed and outside is a material. Back in June of last year, we did hold meetings with the City of Atlanta to review and narrow the options. Next slide, please. So some of the additional services that were required was to fully vet and analyze the different concepts that were requested by the city and the authority. They had to look at the extension of Broad Street through the site. That's for pedestrians. Increase the grade site footprint with the deletion of the TOD footprints. They redesigned the canopy. We renovated the concourse, analyzed the ability to retain the Alabama Street entrance. We reconfigured for Scythe and Alabama Street the curb frontages. We added bus bays and shelters. We also did some traffic studies. We did bridge inspections on the Forsyth Street Bridge. We did survey work of utilities, elevations, etc. And we also looked at an analysis of the CAP, which is Central Atlanta Progress, the bike paths around 5 Points. If you've been around downtown lately, you know they're doing a lot of work down there, adding bike paths and doing repaving of the streets. Next slide, please. Some more of the additional services that came after the value engineering and selection of the concept. We deemed it the best possible way to get all this work done was to issue the work in packages. So package 1 is the site and plaza demolition package. That is beyond the scope of the deconstruction. If you remember last meeting, Mr. Floyd, you asked what was the difference between deconstruction and demolition. So the package 2 is the demolition of the site. Package 3 is the civil and structural. That is the scope beyond MARTA's property, all the tie-ins that we have with our city of Atlanta, that need City of Atlanta approval. Package 4 is the vertical transportation, elevators and escalators. Those have extremely long lead times. And package 5 is the station transformation itself, the remainder of the station design. So with this ask, we are asking for a schedule extension to our designer. Our original agreement assumed that 100% design will be completed 300 days after notice to proceed. And that was provided in September 21, which means they should have been done in June of 22. So today is April 2024. We have done a lot of work since then. So our revised design completion date is now July 2024. We are adding an additional 734 days. Next slide, please. Looking at the design schedule, package 1, which is deconstruction, is 100% complete. Package 2, the demolition, is 100% complete. Package 3, the civil and structures, we're looking at having done in June. Package 4, the vertical transportation, that should have been done yesterday, looking at the date we have here. And package 5, which is our station transformation, we will have that 100% complete in July of 2024. Next slide, please. So our current and requested authorization. Currently, we do have approval for $15 million, and we are asking for an additional $13 million to complete the design, and we are also asking for $5 million for contingency. The contingency is because we are continuously working with our developers to coordinate design elements and station usage to have the best possible experience for our patrons for the World Cup and also for our patrons. So we are refining the design for what the station will look like for World Cup 2026. It will include some beautification to the station, some activations, and we want to make sure that we have enough money to cover that. But remember with contingency, if we do not use it, they do not get paid for it. So it's just that it's contingency. So what we're asking for is a total authorization of $33 million. For the entire project. I'm requesting today $18 million. Next slide, please. So with that, I respectfully like to ask your authorization to increase the contract value of Skidmore, Owings & Merrill, LLC for architectural engineering services, contract number AE 47796. And now I'd like to turn it back over to you, Chair Blakely. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Could I get a motion in a second? It has been properly moved and seconded. Any questions, comments? Mr. Pond?
A lot of moving parts.
Yes, it is.
And I understand the very complex project. What I didn't quite understand was the extension to the schedule. I do understand the different bid packages and the options and the unforeseen conditions, but this contract, that's a significant extension time-wise, so what, maybe just give me a concise explanation why the contract design schedule was extended to the.
There have been varying reasons, sir. We had inclusion of federal funds. We have many, many stakeholders that provided input to this project. Being honest, we've had several leaderships in our capital program. Each one had a different vision. Since January of last year, we've made significant progress with moving this all forward. With all of the different options that were asked for by our partners, it caused more time. SOM was hired to have one concept, not 13. That takes time and costs money.
When you said the federal fund inclusion, you're referring to the rigor
raise
that
grant.
comes with it, the FTA, the NEPA.
Yes, sir. With federal money does come federal requirements. So the NEPA process took time. We are nearing the finish line of it. Hopefully, the 15th of May, we will be absolutely done. But again, that does take time.
And one follow-up question, not about this specific resolution, but the TOD project, where is that in relation to all of this coordination?
So initially, this project was planned to leave a footprint for potential and future TODs. What we have since found working with our redam department, there's just not the density to have that down at the station, not for MARTA to do it, especially with the City of Atlanta purchasing 2 Peach Street. They plan on turning that into a residential space as well. So with all of as the design was refined and we gained more knowledge about what was going on in the area, we decided to remove the TODs from this project. That does not preclude them from coming in future. They're just not a part of this effort.
And then just to add on to that, we're capable of phasing TOD later because of the structural implementations we're doing in this phase.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Mr. Floyd?
2 quick questions. It appears that the time is, I mean, we're about to finish. I mean, we're given the 700 days, but it's 700 days it's already happened.
Yes,
right?
sir.
So we're not moving this into the future 700 days. We're just saying we took a lot of time over the past to do that. So, and I understand that. Are we waiving any kind of penalty that was associated with that time at all?
We are.
We are?
We are.
Okay, so there's a penalty associated with them being late
So
that we're not going to assess. Is that correct?
There was not a penalty assigned to design timelines. The penalty comes with construction. That's where you have the liquidated damages. So I misspoke when I said we are. There are no penalties to waive.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Seeing none, please vote. Motion passes. Next on the agenda, we will have Ms. Davis again for the resolution authorizing a modification and contractual authorization for the construction management at risk, CMAR, with pre-construction services for 5 Point Station Transformation Project, RFP P46354. Ms. Davis.
All right. Well, thank you, Chair Blakely. With your permission, I'd like to jump off the agenda for just 1 second. When I came before you a couple of weeks ago, I did promise an animation of showing the actual deconstruction of the canopy. Each of your stations, you should have a sheet of paper which breaks down step by step what we're looking at here. So if you allow me to, I'd like to walk us through it very quickly. It's only about 90 seconds. Okay? We're ready. Thank you. So the first thing we're looking at here is an animation of the canopy. The first colors you will see are purple. With that, we are framing we are putting shorings in to make sure that when this canopy is deconstructed piece by piece, it does not fall down. In the center of the station, we're also putting some structural infill to add additional protection to the concourse level itself and the station. So now what you see here in red is the piece-by-piece deconstruction of the station. This station is a mix of pre-tension and post-tension beams, so they have to be surgically engineered and removed as to not to cause any harm to the station. So the first thing we're going to remove is the roofing, glass, and structures, the rafters, and then you'll see the solar monitor. We have planking being removed, beams, the drum structure. You'll see the cantilevers being removed. And it just goes by piece. You can see how it's being removed. We have taken a lot of time to design this. The original design was done by WSP back during the feasibility study, and then it was vetted by SOM, who was our current designer. So we've had 2 teams look at this and make sure that this is the right way to deconstruct this station. The very last thing you're going to see are 4 beams. We have columns. We have what we call mega columns. Those columns go all the way to bedrock. Those 4 there. Okay? All right. So thank you very much. Any questions about the animation before we move on? All right.
So those 4 columns that come out last, are we just removing them to the floor surface, or?
Yes, they're not coming out at all. That is what holds the station
Right.
up. We're just removing to the floor levels. Yes, ma'am. 3 of those columns are stagnant. 1 actually rolls for any conditions that are happening with the station, with the earth. This station itself is an engineering marvel. Absolutely it is. If we were not taking down the canopy, and I may be stretching here, so I'm gonna put my hand out so Ms. Rocha can slap me, the station would last to eternity without the water intrusion issue that we have. But the station itself, the platforms, absolute engineering marvel. Okay, back to the resolution, please. All right, so again, I'm Kelly Davis. I am the director of the Facilities Program Management Group, and I'm here to ask for a resolution for authorizing an increased contract amount to Skanska USA Building for construction manager risk services for the 5-point transformation project, contract number P46354. So this presentation is going to look very, very similar to the one we gave before, where you gave increased authorization for packages 1 and 2. Today, I'm asking for packages 3, 4, and 5. So the scope of services, we'll go over the agenda. We're going to go over the scope of services, about the construction and the requested authorization. Next slide, please. So the scope of services, Skanska USA Building is currently performing pre-construction services for the design of the 5-point transformation project. They are working in conjunction with SOM, who is our A&E designer, to provide detailed plans and designs for deconstruction, demolition, and the eventual build back. We are planning on starting deconstruction and demolition in June. And upon completion of the main design packages, the packages will be released for construction. Back during the SOM presentation, I mentioned some of the VE exercises that we did, the value engineering exercise. You see that the roof here is glazed only in the middle. That was one of the things that we did in the city's request to reduce cost and scope. As Chief Roca mentioned, there are 3 things that we need to have so we can actually start construction. The first one is complete. That is the FINSI, which is the finding of no significant impact. The second will be the paper grant agreement for the RAISE grant. We are looking to have that executed May 15th. And the last one will be the executed contract with Skanska. You provided authorization for the funding of which, and the contract is currently being routing, so we can go ahead and get them started. Next slide, please. Just as a reminder, while we're doing all this massive construction, from the animation that you saw, we are relocating our customer-facing services to the Ashby Street Station, in addition to the MARTA Police Central Precinct. So this is just a graphic of what the compounds will look like at the station. So we're moving the MPD Central Precinct, Lost and Found, the MARTA Ride Store, the Reduced Fare Office, and our MARTA Hope Office. While the central precinct is relocating temporarily, please be mindful that coverage will be maintained in the station. Next slide, please. These are just some of pictures of what the station will look like. Again, part of SOM's design scope was to reorientate the bus bays. So we have done soft-tooth bus bays on both Alabama and Forsyth Street. This is the southeast area with the roof on. Next slide, please. This is an area with the roof off. The roof is not retractable, nor does it lift up and down. So I just need to make that mindful. It is not the dome, but we just want to show you the things that are, the elements that are up under the roof. So we do have the pedestrian Broad Street connection. We have Station Soccer, which is extremely popular activation that we will be returning. Our community garden. We have naval plannings. We are also working with our art and transit group so we can have art installations at the station. So these are just some of the things that you see here. Next slide, please. So this is, again, the Peachtree Street entrance looking west. Next slide, please. This is our concourse center looking north. In the back, you see the historic Asman facade. That is being refreshed currently as a part of our station rehab program, which is occurring on the platform levels. That is not a part of the transformation effort, but it, of course, it is staying in the station. It is being currently refreshed. Next slide, please. The Forsyth Street entrance looking west. If you look in the back of the picture, you see where it says Forsyth Street and Alabama Street. Behind that glazing, that's where we are moving our customer-facing offices to. Once the concourse is completely redone, the goal is to have all of our offices there in separate units, of course, but so all of our patrons can have one place to go to get all their needs met. One thing that you see here is all this bright, nice daylight. What we have learned through several different design analyses is that our foot candles, which is the light, the amount of light that gives off from the light, we provide higher foot candles than any other transit agency in the world. So there's no worries. I don't want you to have any worries. The same level of light that you see during the day, it will look the same at night. We're going to make sure that the stations are more than adequately lit for safety reasons and for our patrons. Next slide, please. This is a view of the Forsyth Street entrance looking southwest. You see the soccer pitch in the background. What you cannot see in the foreground is what we created as a consolidated bus area. We heard a lot of chatter, again, in the news and on some from our partners talking about our patrons walking through buses, bus alley, and not having space to board buses, not being safe. So what we have created is a consolidated bus plaza. There will be bus stops, shelters, and benches for our patrons so they can remain comfortably and safely waiting for the buses. Next slide, please. So why am I here again? I'm here again to ask for an increased authorization for Skanska. We have received what we are calling a control budget, not the CGMPs, but the control budget. They have enough data where they can tell us what they think this thing should cost. So we are asking for the estimates for Skanska Builders USA for packages 3, 4, and 5, which is the civil and structural, the vertical transportation, and the station transformation itself. Each package will be issued with a CGMP, which is a component guaranteed maximum price. It will be independently reviewed by a third party for negotiation purposes, and it will be audited by our internal audit department to determine if the cost is fair and reasonable. Next slide, please. So looking at our requested authorization, pre-construction services have been authorized in the amount of $7.5 million. At our last meeting, you did approve the increased authorization for both demolition and construction. We do not have a CGMP for demolition yet. We're working with Skanska to refine those costs now, but the demolition, the deconstruction we do have. Again, today I'm asking for packages 3, which is our civil and structural package, package 4, vertical transportation, and package 5, which is our station transformation. I'm also, just like for SU, I'm asking for contingency. This contingency amount is a little bit more, $20 million. We're asking for it because, again, we're working with our stakeholders and development partners to refine the site, and also we want to be ready for World Cup 2026. We are working on the visioning for that. We don't have a cost or design yet, but we're working on it. So we want to make sure that we have enough money to cover that. But just as before, it's contingency. If we don't use it, it stays in the project. So the total authorization for this effort is $219,500,000. Next slide, please. So with that, I am out as respectfully, I ask for a resolution to authorize the increased contract value to Skanska USA Building, Inc. for construction, manager, and risk services on the 5 Points Project transformation. I said that wrong. 5 Points Transformation Project, I'm sorry. Contract number P46354. And with that, I thank you, and I'll turn it back over to you, Chair Blakely.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Could I get a motion in a second, please? It has already been properly moved and seconded. Questions? Mr. Frierson.
Yeah, I just have a couple for you, Kelly. So with the redesign of the canopy now, with the open light, I can understand. What about rain? Is there places where people can be under shelter when it's raining for the buses?
Yes, sir. There is still adequate space so our patrons don't get wet and nothing under the canopy will wet. But the initial canopy almost took up the entire site. We just scaled it back a little bit, but there will be adequate coverage for rain and weather events, wind events as well. We've done extensive analyses to make sure that everything has proper coverage.
Okay, good, good. I just couldn't see it in there. I'm sure you've got great minds together to cover all of that.
Nobody wants to be out there wet,
Nobody.
me included.
Nobody. I think our patrons do appreciate the shelters that we've been installing now, and it really is helpful. The cost of this project, what we have now, is that what we had in line when we first were talking about this project, or has something changed with the requirements that they've made with the changes in the design?
So right now, we're working with about a $230 million budget.
All right.
We are doing as much as we possibly can to stay as close as possible to that budget.
Okay, so it's $230 million for the budget.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Mr. Bond.
Clarify one aspect of the contract for me. We have the different packages. So you get your GPM, GMP, you guarantee maximum price for each one of the packages, and that's when the design is at least 60%, right?
Repeat that last part?
You take the design to 60% before, or beyond, before you get your guaranteed price from your subs and Skanska.
Yes, sir.
Is there an overall guaranteed maximum price for the whole project at some point, or are we doing it on a package-by-package basis?
If we were going to not do it by package, we would have an overall guaranteed maximum price. But because of the design and the schedule that we are trying to meet, we're doing a component guaranteed maximum price. We do have an overall budget that we are trying to adhere to, but the price is by components.
And at what point in this process do we get the GMP? When design is 100%, or when the design is, say, at 60%?
100%. 60% we get GMP we get at 60%. GMPs we get at 60%, but they're being released in components. That is the at-risk part. They are taking the design at 60%, and they are guaranteeing that the cost will be at or below whatever they are submitting to us.
I understand. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Jones.
Ms. Davis just answered my question. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Could we please vote?
Thank you all. Have a good day.
So Kenya, have we officially passed? All right, great.
Good morning.
So next up, look, hang tight, hang tight. So next on the agenda, we have resolution authorizing a modification and contractual authorization, general planning services, RFP P50097. Ms. Shelley Peart would be your name, Assistant GM of Planning.
Good morning, Chair Blakely, Co-Chair Powers, Mr. Greenwood, Ms. Rocha. Thank you all. I know that this was a last-minute ad, so I do appreciate your time this morning. So yes, as we've said, can you go to the next slide? We're here to request a modification to our GPC P50097 contract. We're going to go over just a few things in the contract, the current status, our recommendation, and then our ask for the board. Next slide. So our current contract supports the planning and project implementation for the Planning and Project Development Department. We right now have a contract of about $76 million that you approved for us in May last year. We have a 5-year contract. It's a 3-year base term of approximately 45.6, and we have 2 1-year options, 15.2 million each. Our DBE goal is still set at 25%. And as I said before, the contracts were executed last May 2023 to HNTB, VHB, and WSP. Next slide, please. Our current status is we have executed several, well, more than several multi-year work orders. We've reached a commitment budget of about 46 million. That's the reason why we're here now trying to get another 15, because we anticipate quite a bit more work for the 3 years that we have to come. We need it to, of course, advance ongoing and future planning initiatives and to support our continuing major projects and NEPA projects that will be coming up. Next slide, please. So just a quick overview of what we have executed to date. If you look at the very bottom, you see it's about almost $46 million. We have some major contracts that we're working on. The Clayton high capacity, well, that's actually the Clayton 54 project, the BRT project, the Clayton South Lake BRT project that Marcus spoke to you earlier about. There was one minor error in my presentation I wanted to point out. I have it listed as miscellaneous work orders, and that is actually my bus network redesign project. Next slide, please. Just to touch base on what we see for the future, why we need the 15 million for the next 3 years. We have Safe Routes to Transit, or the cab transit hub. We have a fare policy study. We have continued work that we're doing on the bus network redesign, and what that work is approximately, we have a lot of infrastructure improvements that we have to do, and this is going to cover the design fees for that. We also have additional projects, general planning support studies, that is ongoing work, and that pretty much totals up the 15 million that we're asking for today. Next slide, please. So our recommendation is that we're here to request an additional 15 million to add to our base contract of 45.6, it's 15. That'll make it a total value of $91 million. And the next slide is, again, we're asking for your approval for that. Thank you, Ms. Blakely.
Thank you. Could I get a motion and a second, please? It has been properly moved and seconded. We are moving into questions and comments, but can you go back to the overview slide that has for the 15 million?
I think it's the next one, right
That
here.
one.
Yes.
Could you speak a little bit to each of those as to why we need these additional funds?
So for the strategic support services, it's a smaller number here, but we are going into the CIG grants this year for the South Lake project, and because of a lot of the changes that have been made to that project itself, we had to do a lot more ridership analysis, and this is going to cover most of that work. And it's not just for South Lake, but we're looking at other projects as well, trying to get them prepared. Safe Routes to Transit, we're doing a lot of design work for that program, and we're doing that through this contract. We do have additional funds for the actual implementation, but the design work that we're doing planning, that's what that's going to cover. The cab transit hub, we just need additional funds there. A lot of these projects that you may have seen on the first slide we anticipate that we're going to need additional funding as we go along over the next 3 years, so it's covered here. For South Fulton Parkway and Roosevelt Highway, these are also projects that we thought we were wrapping up and realized that we needed additional funds for fiscal 25. So that's why you see that number there only for fiscal 25. General planning support studies, we are anticipating, again, trying to make sure that we have enough funds for the next 3 years that can cover any additional asks that we get from any of our jurisdictional partners to cover. Local bus stop placement and amenities, that's an ongoing program that we have, and any additional design work that's needed is taken care of from this contract. The automated transit network feasibility study, that is in conjunction with the airport CID, that we're working with them to look at the financial, I guess, how do I put this? Is it really going to be a good pilot that they're going to be undertaking? What would be the cost? And so we're doing the analysis on that from this study. Okay. And again, I think I addressed the bus network redesign. The fare policy study that's on here, there's actually a little bit of a loaner out to another department that's doing that work, and they needed a contract, so they're using our contract because we can take care of it under the planning contract. Okay. And I think that's the 15 million.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any additional questions, Ms. Hartage?
Well, you answered one of my questions, but I do have, okay. So if we go back in 2023, we approved 76 million.
Right.
with 15.2, was 45.6 million plus the 2 option years. So in less than a year, we're off by 15 million in additional things that we need. I mean, I'm a little concerned. I mean, I know some of this is going to come up, but, and is this going to be every year? Or is
No.
this, I mean, that's a lot of money additional to ask for on top of what we've already approved. So, and I understand you just went down the list, but I do have concerns that that's a big ask.
I think I can address it, Ms. Hardis, and I do apologize that we weren't very clear in the presentation itself. It's more of a, when you look at the original 76 million that we were awarded last year, we allocated a certain portion to years 1, 2, and 3 of the contract, the base years. The additional 30 million that's in option years 1 and 2, they still remain, and they will stay there if, when we get to years 4 and 5, we actually need to continue with the work that we're doing with the contract. We may decide that we're using another contract or just doing something else, or if we've finished all the work. So this is not saying that I'm going to use all of the 91 million that's going to be authorized for us. This is just so that we can allocate funds, or not allocate, but execute work orders against the money that you're going to allow us to have. I hope I'm explaining that correctly. This is exactly the same thing we did at the previous contract that we had in the planning department, and we did not, fortunately, thankfully, have to utilize all of the 99 million that we got for the first 5 years of this work, the expansion work, and I don't anticipate that we'll be using 91 million here as well. This is just.
I had asked a similar question, and I was satisfied with the response, and partially, Shelley, maybe you can speak to this, but maybe we don't need to. It may be clear. I said, what's the do-nothing approach? You know, why are we incurring another 15 million? The do-nothing approach means that we may indeed have enough money to do all of this if we're prepared to wait, because the base term is about, the amount of funds that we have in the base term will run out, and then we will have to wait and recompete and rebid in order to get the rest of those monies in. Or we have, you know, authorization to continue the work now and not, you know, a lot of these projects that Shelley's listed are things that if we do nothing, wait for the funds to become available to us in option year 1 and option year 2, we'll have lost that much time, and when we recompete, those costs, those unit costs will have been accelerated.
Yes.
Mr. Pond?
You're basically pulling up the option year work into this base year, correct?
That's what it amounts to.
My question is, of these 3 contracts, one of those contractors was very subpar in their DBE goals on their prior contracts. And so to give them a lot more work, I'm just curious where we would, there was one contractor particularly that was not performing anywhere close to their commitment. So where are we with talking to them, getting them to?
We have some preliminary numbers that I actually received from Ms. Nash this morning, and I'm going to pull them up for you.
I'm not looking for any specific numbers.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
just curious.
Oh, so they are.
One contractor that's way behind on their commitment on prior work, going back to a 6-month-old report. Where we were dealing with that contractor is what I'm saying.
I think that if we look at the numbers now that we've gotten to, like in February reporting, because the last time Ms. Nash reported, they were showing zeros. We've seen movement, because a lot of our DBEs have been brought to the table now, especially as it relates to our early advancement of trying to look at the public relations pieces of things, right? Getting them to start preparing a little bit earlier than just waiting until the very end of a contract. We're putting together our public engagement plans. We're making sure that we can be ready to hit the ground running. And most of our DBEs, I don't want to say unfortunately, but that's where a lot of them lie. So I'd say that there has been some improvement in the reporting of the DBE numbers.
I can also say, one of the contractors in particular, we pulled in their national leads and several of their regional leads into one meeting with MARTA leadership and discussed exactly that and demanded an improvement in their performance. And that process will be repeated with the other contractor.
Seeing no additional questions, could we please vote? Looks like the motion passes. Thank you, Ms. Peary.
Thank you so much.
Are there any other matters to come before the committee? If not, I will adjourn this committee meeting. Thank you.
call the Operations and Safety Committee meeting to order. And the first item is the approval of the minutes from March 28th, 2024. Can I get a motion and a second? We have a motion and a second. Can we please vote? Includes me. The motion passes. The next item is a resolution authorizing a modification to the contractual authorization for new rail car equipment and services contract P38186. That'll be led by Connie Cresack, Senior Director of our Rail Procurement. Connie?
Good morning, Chairman Pond, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. McKinney, and members of the Operations and Safety Committee. My name is Connie Crisack, and I am the Senior Director for the Rail Vehicle Procurement with the Operations Department. May I direct your attention to Agenda Item Number 2. This is a resolution authorizing a modification in contractual authorization for new rail car equipment and services contract, P38186. Next. Today I'll be discussing CQ 400 major milestones, the global economic impact, the producer price index, additional technical modifications, and the recommendation. Next. I would like to go over a sequence of events that resulted in the economic impact of the CQ 400 contract added value. It has been a little over 4 years since the NTP was issued to Stadler in 2019. Many milestones have been met, beginning with a complete redesign, preliminary design, intermediate design, final design, and presently the trains are being assembled in Salt Lake City. Soon after the notice to proceed, the COVID pandemic also began to unfold. Of the pandemic is a total global economic impact of an added 17.5% of the original value of this contract. I will explain this in further detail later in the presentation. Next. In 2020, preliminary design phase began for Design 1.0 and after the NTP. At the same time, Stadler also began selecting key suppliers, which led to price negotiations and ultimately to a contract with Stadler. Also at the same time, the COVID pandemic began to unfold. Next. Looking at 2020 and mid-2021, as the pandemic continued, MARTA and Stadler decided to adapt a new signature design for the train, one unique to Atlanta with a robust public engagement process, and this is what we now refer to as Design 2.0. In 2021, MARTA and Stadler mutually reached a decision based on the new 2.0 design for a cost-neutral agreement, meaning no impact on financial value and no impact on original contract delivery schedule. With a brand new design, Stadler once again re-enters the task of having to renegotiate the previous supplier pricing contracts with the same suppliers. Next. Looking at 2021 through 2022, as the intermediate design phase develops for 2.0, and at the same time as Stadler is renegotiating with suppliers, the producer price index for railroad rolling stock begins to skyrocket. I will go into this in further detail in a minute. For further reference, before 2021, pre-pandemic, the producer price index had minor variations, as you can see in the yellow bar before our dates. And it generally remained steady. But in 2022, the PPI rose at unprecedented numbers. In 2023, it rose 20% from where Stadler began supplier negotiations in 2021. Inflation went up, local workforces were understaffed, and there were many countless material shortages that drove manufacturing prices and material costs sky high. Next. To elaborate, the Producer Price Index. The PPI for an industry is a measure of changes in prices received for the industry's net output. The PPI publishes approximately 500 industry price indexes in combination with over 3,700 specific product line and product category sub-indices, as well as roughly 500 indices for groupings of industries. The PPI for our specific industry is the railroad rolling stock, and it is published by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. As it relates to our contract, the PPI affected the cost of manufacturing, the cost of assembly, and spare parts, but not any soft costs such as training. Applying the 20% increase of the PPI to these line items equated to $114 million of the addition of the original contract amount. Next. 2023 rolls in, and we are in the middle of final design phase for 2.0. Full procurement cycle has been repeated. However, this time Stadler has no negotiation leverage with key suppliers as they had when they were selected during 2020. Suppliers were refusing to enter into long-term price agreements with Stadler due to market volatility. And as the war in Ukraine unfolded, production sites began to shut down and relocate to higher-cost countries. Raw material pricing spiked, particularly for steel, and large-scale producers in Ukraine shut down. Also, gas and energy costs spiked due to the reliance of Russian gas. And alternative resources for metal alloys from Russia had to be reconsidered. Next. By the end of 2023, assembly of the CQ-400 begins in Salt Lake City. And although all the global economic impact mitigation efforts were considered, they were ultimately ineffective. And after 2.5 years since the final agreement for Design 2.0, the current global economic impacts have calculated into an added 17.5 of the original contract amount. This equates to an additional impact of $114 million of the original contract amount of $649 million. Next. Today, MARTA and Stadler continue to share a common goal and a common definition of success for the CQ-400 contract. And although the total global economic impact to this contract is an additional $114 million, MARTA's one-time share will be $57 million, half of the impact. MARTA's share equates to 8% of the contract value. MARTA and Stadler sharing in the global economic cost impact ensures the delivery of the CQ-400 fleet to Atlanta. I would also like to point out that this value of $114 million has been audited by MARTA's audit department, and the amount was determined to be fair and reasonable. Next. Also, as part of this modification, additional design adjustments were made that are at no additional cost to the contract. These additional design adjustments are as follows: hardening of cybersecurity enhancements to passenger information system, providing sustainable refrigerant system for the HVAC, improved delivery of spare parts, and a redistribution of the bond structure for the contract. Next. In conclusion, the Division of Operations respectfully requests the Operations and Safety Committee recommend approval of the resolution authorizing the additional funds for new rail car equipment and service contract P38186 with Stadler U.S. Next. And I'll respectfully turn over for questions.
Okay, thank you, Connie. Could we have a motion on the second, please? All right, moved by Hardage, seconded by Powers. Questions, discussion? Jim?
Connie, I know what it's like to prepare to come before a board and say, I got to ask for more money. So you did a really good job of laying it out. And I think that it's terrific that Stadler and MARTA have decided that they will split the cost of the increase, and considering that this is under a 9% increase as it affects MARTA, I'm absolutely in favor of it. So I salute the team for working with Stadler to come up with something equitable and that everybody's got a part of it. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Ms. Cresack? Short, to the point for just 57 million. Good job.
Short and sweet.
Okay, can we please vote? I've got 8 board members and 6 votes. We're missing a few votes, I think. We got them all. Oh. I see the culprit. We're still missing one, though. Got it. Okay. Motion passes.
Thank you.
The next item is a resolution authorizing the solicitation of proposals for the procurement of incident reporting platform, RFP P50520. That'll be led by Anthony Thomas, Manager of Customer Technology Products. Anthony?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I just barely made it to afternoon, so apologize for that. Earlier in the committee meetings, Ms. Hardage asked a question about the CNSA application, and so this project is about that. So good afternoon, Chairman Pond, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. McKinney, and members of the Operations and Safety Committee. My name is Anthony Thomas, and I'm the Manager of Customer Technology Products in the Department of Customer Experience. May I please direct your attention to agenda item number 3. This is a resolution authorizing the approval to solicit proposals for an incident reporting platform, RFP P50520. Next slide, please. Today, I will share with you some background around this initiative, detail some of the proposed enhancements planned with this new platform, provide an overview of the project's phasing, and describe our planned next steps. Next slide, please. MARTA's current incident reporting platform, CNSA 2.0, is used for reporting both emergency and non-emergency incidents, and is used as a tool for MARTA PD and other customer-facing departments to receive and respond to issues on MARTA's system. The current contract with Cutcom Software expires in December of 2024. We are here today to gain approval to solicit for a new generation of this application. Next slide, please. The new platform will have several enhancements over what we have today. For example, the new application will provide simpler text options to connect riders directly with MARTA PD. The new solution will also enable other departments to more directly receive reports related to their focus area, allowing them to respond faster to these non-emergency issues. We are also planning for robust integration with other major initiatives, like the upcoming Enterprise Customer Relationship Management Platform, or ECRM, and the new Super application, which will replace MARTA on the Go. Our goal for this initiative is to make it simpler for our patrons to report issues they see on the system and make it faster for MARTA to respond to them. Next slide, please. To deliver a successful project, we have identified 3 phases for this initiative. Phase 1 will involve the customization, testing, and rollout of the application. Phase 2 will involve operations and maintenance and ongoing support. And finally, Phase 3 will be the integration of the application into the new MARTA on the Go and ECRM. We anticipate a term of up to 5 years, and the Office of Diversity and Inclusion will evaluate this project for DBE participation during the pre-solicitation phase. Next slide. Our team is working closely with internal stakeholders, including MARTA Police, customer service, IT, and others on the technical requirements for this work. Once we have received your approval to solicit, we will work with our partners in contracts and procurement to release the solicitation. Once proposals are received and evaluated, we will return to this board for approval to award the contract and kick off Phase 1. Next slide, please. With that, I conclude my remarks and respectfully request approval of the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Could we have a motion and a second? Moved by Durrett, seconded by Hartage. Questions?
Thank you. This is exciting. And I see your timeline, but realistically, when will we probably have our customers using something better than the CNSA app?
So we are working really fast to make sure that we have the new solution available before the current one expires, so December of this year.
Thank you.
Okay, going down in order. Mr. Durrett?
Yeah, I just want to say, whenever I see you and David Emery in here to bring us something, I'm excited. And you've done it again. So fantastic. Can't wait for it.
Awesome. We have a lot more stuff coming soon.
Ms. Jones? Ms. Jones?
Ms. Hartage already asked my question.
Okay. Is that it? Oh, there we go.
Right. With the current vendor, are there any option years?
No, there are no options in the current contract.
Okay, so it will expire.
Correct.
2025, you said?
December of this year, it will expire.
December 2024. Okay, thank you. All right.
Okay, I think that concludes the questions. Can we please vote? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Next item is a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for transit bus recovery vehicle 1, IFB 50431. That'll be led by Charles Chaffin. Charles?
Good afternoon, Chairman Pond, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. McKinney, and members of the Operations Safety Committee. My name is Charles Chafin, and I would like to direct your attention to agenda item number 4. It's a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of a transit vehicle recovery truck, IFB B50431. Next slide, please. We had one vehicle, recovery vehicle in our fleet as of right now. It's a 2007 model with 255,000 miles. We will not be retiring this unit. We'll be using it as a backup secondary unit. But this vehicle can only tow up to 35,000 pounds. And with the current vehicle weights increasing with the battery electric buses, this vehicle can no longer support all of our fleet needs for today and going into the future. Next slide. The new tow truck that we're looking at is a 2025 model with an 80,000 pound capacity. So that means it will be able to tow anything we see in the future for battery electric, articulated, and so forth. It has enhanced recovery capabilities, and it will allow MARTA to be able to have more flexibility to remove assets from the road quicker because we do have vendors, but we are not the only people they're towing. So there's sometimes long lead times, and there's sometimes reasons for expediency for us to remove vehicles. Next slide. Fouts Commercial Vehicles put in a bid for $480,920. This is available for grant funds for an 80-20 split, and the audit found it fair and reasonable on pricing. Next slide. The Office of Bus Maintenance is requesting approval of a contract to Fouts Commercial Vehicles in the requested amount of $480,920. I now turn it back over to you, Chairman Pond, for consideration.
Thank you, Charles. Could we have a motion on the second? Moved by Hartage, seconded by Durrett. Any questions? Jim?
Let's also increase our mean distance between failures so we don't use it as much.
I agree 100%, sir.
Any other questions? Can we please vote? The motion passes. I think we're done on that one.
I have a
No,
briefing,
I've got
sir.
that. So the next, oh, that's right, you're the same briefer.
Yes, sir.
All right. I was waiting for you to sit down, so.
You can, by all means, dismiss me. I'm okay with it.
All right. The next item is a briefing for the bus thermal events review. And that's Charles again.
Yes, sir. So this is agenda item number 5. This is a bus thermal events review. And when we're talking about thermal events, this is possibility of fire, smoke, and excessive heat situations. Next slide. Right now, our fleet is comprised of 3 main components: our propulsion systems, CNG, diesel, and electric, with CNG making up 71% of our fleet. Next slide. In the past 60 months, MARTA unfortunately has seen 22 incidents with a total loss of 6 vehicles, equating to $973,730. If you look at the pie graph, you will see that most of these are comprised of engine issues, with brake issues coming in second and minor issues of tires, accident, vandalism taking up the rears. Next slide. Mobility in the same time frame has had 2 total lost vehicles for $236,433. With their incidents, MARTA and engineering team did investigate along with a third-party investigator, and it was found that root cause were both considered electrical issues, either improper wiring or the lack of securement. Next slide. For the transit buses and the 22 incidents, for the engines, we found some issues with the EGR systems and the coolant systems. Service bulletins were created to give all of our technicians the knowledge on how to properly secure hoses and torque down clamps and replacement of clamps. And a campaign was launched on the coolant systems. For the HVAC systems, I'm sure some of you remember last year me coming to the board about the articulated buses and the HVAC systems we had issues with. After I came to the board last year, we did start doing bi-weekly inspections on all the compressor clutches and coils to try to be proactive and see what kind of damage we're seeing. Since then, we have gathered a tremendous amount of data, and we decided to go ahead and do a campaign to replace all compressors, clutches, and coils. That was slated to be done by the end of this month, but I'm happy to say that that is already complete now. So all articulated buses in the fleet have had brand new HVAC systems installed, and we'll be moving forward with a planned schedule to replace components off of the data that we found. We also, to give us an earlier warning system, had the vendor add an additional fire suppression wire to that side of the engine compartment because there was not one from the factory. So now we get a little bit better early detection on any kind of heat issues. Brakes were contributed to a failure in the calipers that were installed on the vehicles. After extensive search and testing, we decided to move away from man calipers to Meritor calipers, which proved to be successful. And we're currently undergoing a bearing repack of our complete Gillig fleet on the front bearings. The last 2, as I'm sure you remember in the news, were tire issues. Our tires are done by a third-party vendor. So once we had these 2 issues, we did a 100% internal inspection, found approximately 7% of the fleet had defects of either minor wear on the curb, low tire pressure, tread issues, and so forth. We had a meeting with our tire vendor to discuss our discrepancies and where the contract was lacking. They sent in additional resources, and since April 1st, 434 tires have been replaced on the fleet, and we are below 2% of any kind of deficiencies, which was another 100% internal inspection by us this past weekend. So next slide, please. Of course, our mission is to provide safe travel and transportation for our passengers and our operators and be good stewards of our equipment. We take these incidents very seriously. We get involved with engineering reports with our vendors, and we call in third-party inspectors when needed. Our next steps to try to prevent this from happening and to be more proactive is we have an independent review coming in from STV that will help look at our thermal processes on how we conduct our investigations. We're going to redefine our QA process. Right now, we have 1 inspector for our complete fleet. We've been trying to robust this and bring this up over the past couple of years. STV is going to help us get this going and make this a fruition and make it happen. Redefine maintenance expectations. What we're saying about that is we've always held vendors and parties accountable when something like this happens and a true fault is found. But we're going to redouble that effort. We're working with providing information to legal when necessary and getting other departments involved to help us push the agenda forward. Union engagement, I've been giving monthly updates of our progress on campaigns and the remedies we're doing to the union to let them know that we're taking this very seriously and we're trying to make it a priority. An active peer review has been requested to assist us and to look over the processes too. And a continuous improvement, we're trying to leverage additional technologies. And one I'm proud to say that we're going to be doing soon is a new technology on the tires that will allow live real-time data to tell us what the pressure is while it's out on the road, what the temperature of the tire is while it's on the road, and it has the future capability of telling us tire tread in real life time. So this is something that's fixing to be tested soon. We've actually been working on this before these incidents happened, but it's in the near future. So we're really looking forward to that. Next slide. I'll turn it back over to you, Chairman Pond, for questions.
Thank you, Charles. Are there any questions for Mr. Chaffin? Jim?
You really inspire confidence, so we think we got the right guy for the job.
Yes, sir.
I'm surprised that vandalism is equal with accidents on the road, and maybe you don't want to respond to that.
It's very simple. A passenger lit a fire inside the bus with a rag, and then the accident was actually a vendor misproperly towing a bus and letting the bumper drag on the ground, which caught the bumper on fire. And we did hold that vendor accountable to pay for those damages. I do not know what MVD would do with the passenger.
Are there any other questions?
Turn up your mic, Chief.
Sorry, Chief.
Let's leave the chief alone. Okay. All right. Mr. Bryson.
Yeah, just one question. You mentioned about the towing of the bus. So are there situations where someone else will tow our bus? Is that the reason why we are trying to get another tow truck, I guess?
Yes, sir. So we do have external vendors. We have 2 vendors that tow in all of our zones.
Right.
And so they do help us tow vehicles because we don't have the capability to do it all on our own. And even with the addition of this second tow truck, we will still need their assistance, but the value of their contract will decrease.
Okay, I understand. All right. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Any other questions? If not, there's one other item, and it's just for your information to review only, and that's the February key performance indicators. So if there are no other matters for this committee, we'll conclude the meeting.